are introduced. Oops, sorry, we got a little bit of a. There we go. Native yeast, really the production, just a little bit of sulfites added. This actually spends a little bit of time in steel as well, just to round it out. But 99%. These are winemaking techniques that are common in Georgia that oftentimes you see associated with amber wines that really produce a very lively. It's just like a living thing in your glass. So let's focus on the wine itself. I'm going to open it up to these guys to kind of throw in their thoughts on this. I think this is just a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful wine that we have this month.
Yeah, definitely like a classic Saperavi. If I was going to kind of put this is in the put it in a box, it's definitely which is kind of funny thing to say, because who's had Saperavi if you're not someone who kind of like goes to the farther reaches of the wine world. But when I say classic, you get these like nice dark fruits, that's Dana was mentioning. There's always a little bit of this almost you could kind of compare it to like a good Cabernet Sauvignon or something like that. There is this structure to it. There's a nice backbone of tannin. You can definitely taste that in some of these younger Saperavis. You have that always kind of like fresh crushed blackberry, a lot of sort of spice notes to it, a little bit of earth, and yeah, like you mentioned that the grape is Teinturier, so it's kind of like one of those red juiced grapes that. Yeah, it can be a big bold wine. There's definitely some Saperavis that are actually in the like 14 to 15% alcohol range. This one is at 13, so it's actually pretty versatile. And sometimes you see these wines and they become kind of like massive and they kind of like a little unwieldy at the dinner table. This is definitely a wine that you could pair well with something like a good steak or something like that.
Absolutely, absolutely. What I like is the balance in it too, right? And you can get a little bit of that stemminess, a little bit of brambliness that those tannins that Ryan was mentioning are coming from the grape, but also from the fact that stems are included, right? I mean, the stems are thrown into the qvevri where that fermentation, that spontaneous fermentation takes place, leading to that really nice balance. Yeah, I like this a lot.
Yeah, and just to add to what Dana was saying regarding qvevri, what I love about qvevri is that it's this ancient technique, but it harnesses all of like the best practices of winemaking we have today, right? And so they're buried underneath the ground, so that creates a stable temperature for the wines to ferment in. So you don't need, if you go to a winery, you often see stainless steel tanks with temperature controls. Well, this is a natural way to have a stable temperature. And also because they're kind of V-shaped at the bottom, once fermentation is finished and you would leave this over the winter in Georgia, the sediments settle down to the bottom naturally, and so you don't need to use fining agents or filtering agents. So it's a really beautiful natural way to make wine.
And we should have mentioned too, these are not small vessels, right? And some of you might have been to our Wines of Georgia event where we talk about this winemaking process. These are massive vessels that people have to literally climb inside to clean out. Again, using only natural methods, right? Cleaning with vinegar and beeswax. So you can get a sense of like, what could go wrong? Well, quite a bit. So there's a tremendous amount of attention to detail, and it certainly shows up in the glass.
Yeah, there's a lot. It's a really interesting wine too, because in Georgia there aren't a lot of old vines. Just a lot of the vines were ripped up during the Soviet era. So these are, I think these are actually like 60 to 80-year-old vines.
They're 80, yeah.
A lot more complexity, and the winemaker is a really Georgi Dakishvili and his son make this wine, and he's one of the kind of early proponents of going back to qvevri, and so it's from a really good pedigree, this wine, in addition to just being kind of juicy and delicious. So
and just for a little bit of geography, Kakheti in eastern Georgia, probably one of the most famous wine growing regions in Georgia. It's where a lot of the big projects are, and a lot of the more famous winemakers and winemaking is happening. That said, almost every region of Georgia has winemaking and has totally unique varieties and totally unique histories and cultures there. So there's some very a huge amount of diversity in the Georgian winemaking landscape. There's So a lot of people associate Saperavi as kind of being like the Georgian red grape right now, but there are hundreds of other actual native varieties that are also really fun to explore, and we've explored a few of them in the past with other past clubs. But yeah, Saperavi is probably going to be on restaurant lists. You're going to like a Russian restaurant or Georgian restaurants or a lot of Eastern European restaurants. They'll feature Saperavi most likely. So it can be kind of a familiar face if you on a wine list. And yeah, again, like very much kind of in this sort of style, I would say is a pretty typical expression of Saperavi.
Also, another interesting fact. Oh, sorry, Jeff.
You say, what do you guys think about ageability on this and maybe food pairings?
Oh, with the 10s? Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. So yeah, this is definitely something that you could, this is 2019. So it is, it's young, but it's drinking really nicely. This is a wine that actually if you're drinking it now, open it up, let it decant, let it breathe in a decanter, excuse me, and give it some time to get some air. However, if you happen to forget about it in your cellar for 5-10 years, something like that, that's definitely going to reward you. Or even the longer it ages, those tannins are going to soften up. So it could be next year, that sort of thing. You don't have to wait 10 years. But it's definitely something that the tannins will soften up, the acids will kind of integrate, and you're going to get a little more of those kind of like leathery, spicy sort of cedar notes that are going to come out over time. But right now, yes, it's kind of young, primary, really fun and fresh. And so yeah, for great cellar potential, but also some great pairing potential too.
This wine is super versatile, and so I would say anything that you would pair, say, a Pinot or kind of like a Grenache with, you can do salmon, pork, chicken, like stews. Pretty versatile wine.
Yeah. I'm really getting these like floral tones actually on it, like which is something that I always kind of forget sometimes that you can get from dark colored red wines. You can have these nice kind of like almost like crushed roses, violets sort of thing. Some really like kind of like beautiful kind of like rosy sort of tones to it that I think are really, they're really unique. Actually, now this has been open, we opened this up. Actually it was open yesterday, but so it has had some time to open up and really kind of begin to show these. So again, another good reminder to let your wine breathe, let it open up. You'll be rewarded with complexity, with new smells, new flavors, and new sensations. Yeah.
Cool. How about we move on to number 2?
Yeah, so number 2, club wine number 2 this month. This may be a familiar face for some of you. This is the 2019 Cremisan Hamdani Jandali. We've also heard it pronounced Jandali, but we like the sound of Hamdani Jandali. This is actually from Bethlehem in Palestine. It's a 50-50 blend. Really cool wine. This goes back to the early days of Ancient Wine Guys and our kind of sister project, which is SHARE, the Society for Humanitarian Archaeological Research and Exploration, which Dana and I were spearheading for a while, and then had tea over a couple years ago. And it's for those of you who don't know, this is a project that brings together Israeli Jewish youth and Arab Palestinian kids in Israel for a 2-week archaeological project every summer. COVID got in the way of that the last 2 years, unfortunately, but we're kind of gearing up hopefully for this coming summer. But anyway, it's a really cool project and very near and dear to all of our hearts. So Dana and I actually had the opportunity, I think it was 2017, to visit this winery in Bethlehem, which is really cool. You go into the West Bank, and there it is, and kind of the heart of the West Bank. And it's really close to Jerusalem. It's only about five miles, I think, Bethlehem. Everything's really close together there. But the winery was started by Salesian monks in I think 1885. It's a Roman Catholic order founded in the mid 19th century, and they've been producing wine here since the very beginning, since 1885, and then kind of modernized the operation in the late 90s. But their project is really cool. They give a lot of their proceeds to these the same kind of projects that Dana and I work and T now work on, these bicommunal projects throughout Israel and the occupied territory. So really cool project. So the wine is really cool, but also what they're doing is experimenting with indigenous varieties. So these really ancient varieties that we can attest in written sources as far back as the 17th century. But we know were grown in the region probably as early as the Roman and Greek period, and then all the way through. And a lot of these grapes would have probably been used as table grapes for many centuries, and now these folks and others are trying to find them and revitalize them. So Hamdani is a grape that's a little bit bigger, hard skinned grape, gives a little bit more texture and kind of body to the wine, and then Jandali is a lighter, kind of more floral wine. So we're going to see this in one of the other wines tonight, but this is a fairly typical kind of blend where you take a bigger bodied wine and a more refined wine in it, and you find a kind of nice marriage of those two grapes, gives something really satisfying. So we just absolutely love this wine, and it's the first time I've tried this vintage, 2019, and it's as good as I remember.
Yeah.
The other one. So yeah, I mean, if we kind of put it up to the nose, we get a lot of apricot, peach, kind of stone fruit, a little bit of a kind of melon, pineapple even. It's like tropical. And then yeah, kind of an herbal quality, maybe almost like a tarragon or some kind of herbs you might put in baking. And then yeah, really refreshing.
I'm thinking you pair this with Palestinian chicken makhlube, which is like this chicken dish that uses almonds and cream, right? And the acidity is right where it needs to be to cut through that. Yeah, these honeyed layers of, yeah, you said it, Jeff, melon and peach. And this is one of those wines where I'm like, where I think we're really sort of surprised, right? When I think we encountered this the first time, which was even before AWG, and I'd even say this wine had a lot to do with sort of opening our eyes to say like, wow, this amazing gems that can be found in some pretty unexpected places.
Yeah, one of the things that really strikes me, I mean, one, yeah, just like obviously there's so much like kind of fruit and aromatic complexity to this wine, but it's still really light on its feet. It is bright, it is fresh, it's expressive, and that is hard to do from a warm climate like that. Like where when you're handling a white grape in a hot climate, it's really easy to lose that acidity, to lose the to kind of to burn off all of those kind of edges, and to kind of end up with a wine that's just kind of like big and round and sort of like lacking in a lot of depth. And it really speaks to one, the adaptive nature of the grapes. The grapes are definitely obviously well suited to the climate, and that really also kind of speaks to the importance of discovering your climate's native varieties, if you have native grape varieties. And this is something that I think is really wonderful to see now, kind of in the world of wine, is that you're having places embrace their native varieties, which previously they were ripping up, like we're talking about with Saperavi in Georgia, or in Greece, for example. They ripped up almost all of their kind of native varieties in like the 60s, 70s, and even earlier than that, and replanted it with like Cabernet Sauvignon, Syrah, Sauvignon Blanc. Not to say that those are bad grapes by any means, but they don't necessarily adapt as well to these climates, for one, ease of growing, but also two, for just complexity, for uniqueness. And so it's really wonderful to see winemakers around the world really embracing their native varieties, and really kind of giving them a chance to shine where they're from, which it's kind of going back to the roots again, of where the wine from these places began.
Yeah, this is grown at I think the average height of the vineyards for this is about 2,600 feet, which is pretty high up. I mean, if Jerusalem, it snows in the winter there, it can, and so this is an area where you're going to get cold nights, warm days, but cold nights keeps that, like Ryan said, keeps the acidity fresh, and you really feel it, I think, on the finish for the wine. It's got that kind of crisp apple, like zesty lime, kind of lingers with you. So I always love that kind of wine where you have a kind of a tropical nose and expectation of something a bit rounder, and then you still get that kind of nice linear and really good with food finish on it too. So yeah, Danny, I was thinking maybe some hummus and falafel as well would be good with this, and some kind of salty cheese maybe.
Oh yeah, like a halloumi cheese or something like that. Oh, yeah.
Oh, I was gonna say that when Ryan, Dana, Jeff, and I were in Israel, we went to the Golan Heights, and there were definitely some over-extracted, big Chardonnays and cabs that we tasted. You know, not indigenous varieties, obviously.
Yeah.
To Israel. Yeah.
Yeah, again, it's not to say that those wines are necessarily, you know, bad or anything like that. Obviously, like, you know, here in the United States, you know, there were native varieties, but they were not of the, you know, Vitis vinifera variety. They're more of the you know, wilds, Vitis sylvestris, rupestris, these other sort of more wild type vines, which don't typically produce as complex of wines. Those is obviously debated, and there's lots of research ongoing about different hybrid varieties and things like that. So that's not to say that, you know, you can't transplant a variety to somewhere else and do wonderful, amazing things with it. It's only because in many of these countries, they're, you know, the allure of global commercialization of, you know, Chardonnay, Cabernet, you know, these sort of things was causing a lot of what could have been really fantastic wines to not get made because of the, you know, the maybe the difficulty in pronouncing the grape, or as we'll find in the next wine, there's, you know, there's definitely sometimes some language barriers that can be marketing nightmares, if you will, for certain grapes in certain regions as well.
Well, that's a great intro. Let's move on to that.
Yeah.
To that wine.
Yeah, absolutely. So the next wine we have here is the 2014 Lucien Arkas Baglari. My Turkish is not very good, so please excuse my pronunciation. And this is called Antre, and this is a blend of two varieties. Pronunciation for these, actually, I do have, because we had a Turkish wine importer finally explain it to us how to exactly pronounce these two grapes. So it's Okuzgozu and Bogazkere.
Bogazkere.
Mm-hmm. And Bogazkere actually means throat burner. So when we were talking earlier about making a blend of two different varieties to achieve this sort of middle grounds, this is exactly what's been done here. Okuzgozu is more like the lighter, more kind of like fresh, floral, almost like think like a Pinot Noir. It's often compared to for a red. You know, more kind of like more on the fruit, more on the sort of like softness to the wines. Bogazkere, however, is more like Cabernet Sauvignon, is how it's often described, where you have these like, you know, darker flavors. You get a lot of spice characteristics. You can have in young Bogazkeres, they can be really kind of grippy and tannic and very, very well structured. So very common to see these two grapes playing together in red wines from Turkey. This is a very, very kind of classic red blend. This particular wine is from southeastern Anatolia, so just basically north of the Syrian border, and it is 100% organic vineyard. Lucien Arkas is they're like a medium-sized producer for Turkey. There's actually not that many producers in Turkey, partly due to kind of a push away from alcohol that's kind of longstanding there from the government, but also it's also not centralized, but it's very difficult to start your own winery. This is from what I understand from talking with Carolis. He's our
increasingly so too.
Increasingly so, yeah. It's getting even more difficult you can't just be like, oh, I'm a small little winemaker, I just want to start making, you know, from 1 or 2 you know, acres or hectares of vineyards. It's almost impossible to do that, from what I understand. You have to have a large, not only kind of amount of actual financial capital, but you have to have political capital as well to be able to work with the local governments, be able to convince the right people, and you have to have the right connections. So at about, I think this is about 200 hectares, which is a decently large vineyard, you know, production site. And actually it's split between vineyards in Western Turkey and in Eastern Turkey and Southeastern Turkey, where these are from. So, you know, in the scheme of things, compared to some that have like thousands of hectares or tens of thousands of hectares, this is actually a relatively small winery in Turkey. But yeah, as far as the style here, this wine having a bit of age, you definitely get some of those kind of more evolved characteristics, a little bits of like wood, kind of like cedar wood, a little bit of mushroom, a little bit of these kind of like earthier sort of tones. Definitely a wine that, like, you know, comes out with a little more kind of like almost not savory as in salty, but more like you know, off of the fruit spectrum, I would say.
Yeah.
Yeah, so but a really interesting wine. I love all the kind of like kind of cracked pepper and sort of spices and all that sort of thing in there. Definitely something that's, you know, drinking really, really well like right now. It has structure to hold up for, you know, for years more. But personally, I think this is a wine that I would be drinking probably in the next 6 months, you know, to year, just because I think it's a tasty wine, and I could find so many things to pair it with.
It's a great holiday wine. I mean, it really, really is. And you know, some of you guys might remember we had another Bogazkere Okuzgozu blend that from our friends at Sevilen, which was a delicious wine in its own right, but a really different expression. I mean, like, yeah, I think you hit it. The earthiness, the sort of saddle leather, cracked pepper. It's definitely an earthier expression of you know, that. I remember the Sevilen being a little bit more austere and you know, very structured, delicious wine. But this has a little more going on, which is really pretty cool.
And for like kind of comparisons, I might go somewhere, like if I was gonna blind taste this wine, I definitely would, you know, it makes me think of some Italian reds I've had, kind of like Asian Italian reds that have a little more of that kind of like leathery, spicy sort of character to it. It reminds me of some certain Spanish wines I've had. You know, it's definitely something that is, but it is definitely unique. You know, it's a really kind of you know, like unique profile for a wine that I personally find it's really compelling on a level where, like, yeah, it's very drinkable, but also it's something that kind of makes me think differently about how I think about wine.
Absolutely, yeah.
A lot of plum and cherry too.
Jeff, what would you pair this with?
Yeah, I think, like, I mean, obviously the natural place you go to, I think, is like a lamb kebab, just kind of classic Turkish cuisine. You know,
With like saffron rice on the side.
yeah, I mean, you can kind of imagine the mint and the tarragon and all those different flavors going together with this really wide. Yeah, to me, it does have a lot of kind of herbal quality to it. Cardamom, like something with cardamom in it, I think would be super good. Like a lamb or beef cardamom stew. That one Jeff Ham makes, maybe we can get him to that beef stew. I think that would go amazingly well with this. Like that, yeah.
Beautiful.
Also, the price on this wine would be triple the amount if you got this in Turkey, because wine is taxed really heavily there. Turkish wines are actually cheaper to purchase in the U.S. despite importing it than in Turkey itself.
Yeah, that's one of those things that it's not really a favorable climate, you know, for producing wine, and you know, hopefully that changes, obviously for our sake. You know, we're a little biased, but it's one of those things that, yeah, it's amazing how many non-wine related things can affect wines, and the price of wine also actually as well. So it's always interesting.
It's a little ironic too, because Turkey is a major producer of grapes, you know, worldwide. One of the largest producers per capita of grapes. Only a small percentage of which are actually produced. You know,
I think it's less than 2%, or 1 or 2% of the grapes produced there are actually for wine.
Which is a shame, because this is delicious.
Yeah, no, it's definitely.
We're doing our part. All right. Last but not least.
So the last wine we have, this was a special offer wine. So it's a 2018 Sevilen Nativus. So Sevilen, they also make Okuzgozu Bogazkere blend as well. And those of you who were with us from day one tasted that, and that was in our first club. But so we wanted to feature something else from them, which is a white grape called Narince. This is done in stainless steel tanks, similar region, Southeast Anatolia as well. Yeah, it's been a while, so I'm gonna just taste it along with it with you guys. I get so much lemon pith, and I think it's actually it's really interesting to compare it to the Cremisan Hamdani Jandali, because you can see the difference here. Whereas the Hamdani Jandali, as Jeff mentioned, has more like peach. This is like more. I'm getting more like citrus pith and lemon pith, and a slightly lighter wine as well in terms of just the weight of it on your tongue.
Really nice texture though. That's
Texture.
yeah.
And really good floral
Has a
notes
little
too.
bite to it.
Yeah, melon. I get some green melon. I think that's something it shares with Hamdani Jandali.
Yeah, like
Little
cantaloupe.
Yeah, cantaloupe.
But yeah, I remember when we first tasted this wine, I remember my notes. It was like, wow, that's a lot of melon. They like a lot of like green, kind of like green fruits and you know, really nice kind of like, you know, just kind of like a, you know, sink your teeth into texture, but still again, like really, like you said, like kind of like lighter and brighter. Yeah, it's really lovely one. One interesting thing actually I learned about Narince is actually, speaking of grapes grown not for wine, Narince is actually one of the varieties that it's grown for its leaves for making dolmas. And so actually this is a variety that very rarely, considering how much of it's grown, is actually made into wine. So a lot of times they're just doing it just for the leaves, you know, which seems like a shame to me. You know, I mean, I'm not obviously not wasting the grapes. They're probably using it for raisins, some raisins and things like that as well. But yeah, it's you know, it's kind of that would be like an easy pairing suggestion there. I would say, you know, that
dolmas with this.
Yeah, like it's just vegetarian dolmas. Yeah.
Right. Like yeah, if they're especially if they're lemon.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
And this is also a native variety as well.
Right. Yeah, this is grown actually in the village that Narince is native to. So I believe on the front there's a line of Turkish underneath the Nativus. I'm not gonna try and pronounce it, but I did look it up and translate. I believe it's basically like you know, this is, you know, from such and such village, and the importer told us that this is a village where the Narince grape essentially originates.
That's so cool. I mean, yeah, it's.
Yeah, I mean, it's as far as, you know, again, speaking of versatility of wines, for something like kind of comparison's sake, I mean, this could be somewhere in like a more textured Sauvignon Blanc. It could be something along the lines of like, you know, a really nice unoaked Chardonnay, something like that.
Or lighter Pinot Gris or something.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. A good Pinot Gris. Definitely can see that sort of like kind of like peachy melony sort of element to it.
And personally, I would not age this wine very long. Like I guess I think you're gonna lose some of the freshness of it. This is a wine that I mean, you don't have to drink it now, but I would say consume within the next 2 years, 2-3 years.
And the steel ferment really keeps it clean and nice. I think if this had oak on it, it would be a little much.
I agree. I mean, I think this is a wine that if there was new oak that they were trying to put into their program for this wine, I think it would
just taste like new oak.
It would taste like new oak.
Yeah, and you would lose all the characteristics of the grape, would be kind of overwhelmed by the oak.
Yeah. I mean, it's always an interesting discussion about talking about like how much is enough, how much is too much when it comes to oak. And you have wineries that have these really wonderful barrel programs, very expensive to buy new barrels every year. They want new oak. And then you taste the wines and you're like, well, I feel like this would have been a better wine if it didn't, you know, have all that expensive oak kind of, you know, put at it. And then they release it pretty young. Those are wines that you probably would need to age to let the oak integrate, or in my opinion, that they're just, you know, they're wines that would be just better off without the oak.
Yeah, let the grape do the work.
Very few, you know, white wines that are, you know, heavily oaked with new oak. I feel like are really just tasty when they're young. They're definitely going to be something that wants to have a little bit more age. So like classic example would be like great white Burgundies. Chardonnay is the grape. When you taste like, you know, Grand Cru Burgundies and it's spent time in new oak, when it's really young, it's like it's not that good. You know, it's something that is actually really like very can be kind of aggressive and just so powerful. But then, you know, 5-10 years down the line, you go, okay, now I get it. All the beautiful kind of components can get integrated.
Yeah, exactly. It's not integrated. It's the harmony is not there. You can hit over the head with like pop, 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 as opposed to, you know, something that's like a harmonious note.
Yeah. So something to keep in mind, you know, because a lot of times there's, you know, wines that it's said, oh, it's you know, we use a lot of oak in this if you're going wine tasting, and sometimes it's a good thing, sometimes it's not. You know, sometimes there's wines that, you know, they really want to be themselves and they really don't need a lot of extra treatment. I mean, some of the wines can be, you know, really really wonderful when they're like young and fresh. And this is 2018, so it has a couple years of age on it. You know, but it's still really kind of like lovely and bright and fresh. And I think this is a wine that I'd be drinking, you know, just basically through next summer if it lasted that long, which it wouldn't. Yeah, because I would be drinking it probably in the spring.
Oh yeah. Well, we got about 5 minutes left in our time tonight, so we can turn it out and open it up to questions if you guys have any thoughts or your own tasting notes if you're tasting along with us.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if any burning questions, any kind of extra details, something like that. I think,
Eloise has a question for us. Eloise always.
Yeah, yeah, I had a question about the one from Bethlehem.
Yeah.
I was in that region in 2019, but I only had Jordanian wines. I didn't have any from Bethlehem. I'm finding that very interesting.
Can't see if you're over there.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
And
there's a lot of there's a lot of wine production in Israel. Not much though
Yeah.
in the West Bank. So I mean, this is there's only a handful of wineries in the West Bank, in the what we call the occupied territories are producing wine. So it's a pretty exceptional project. And the vineyards they have are some of the vineyards are cut right through by the containment wall there. And they actually have all of those vineyards are spread among the owners of all the vineyards are spread among the 3 Abrahamic faiths, which is really interesting as well. So you have some vineyards owned by Jews, some by Arabs, and some by Muslims. And they, so the whole kind of vision of that project is a very kind of ecumenical and cooperative one. So that's another reason we love it. So.
Oh yeah, it's very special.
Yeah.
Eloise, as Jeff mentioned, the vineyards and the estate, they're owned by the Silesian monks. And so a lot of that money, I think all of that money actually goes back into the community and into social programming. And a lot of that is
Job training for youths.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We
Are the
love it.
monks Christian monks?
Yeah, it's a Catholic.
Oh, okay.
I think it's actually the second. I'm reading. I think it might be the second biggest Catholic order, which seems kind of hard to believe, but a lot of their when Dana and I were there, we had I think we're still getting over it, but we had some of their brandy. So they turn a lot of their wine into. I think they do a lot of official wine, and then they turn the not so good stuff into brandy. So we tried that too.
Yeah, we're like, we stuck with this. We without saying too much.
One thing also to add there, Eloise, you're having Jordanian wine. That's another place where there's thousands of years of wine history, grape growing history. It's written about many times throughout history, but due to current political climate, it's very difficult to start a new winery there. There's a few in Western Jordan. I know Jeff spent a good amount of time there and knows Jordan quite well. So probably speak more as to where and what exactly. But I do know that at least as far as starting a winery there, it's very, very difficult. So another one of those things that hopefully things can change at some point, and people who want to start a winery can do that, because there's so much history to tap into there. And I know a lot of the wines also that are grown there are not native varieties. They're imported or international varieties as well. And it would be really, really cool to see some people try and bring some stuff back there, because we'd like to try it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all very interesting. The Jordanian wines, I understand, were aged in concrete tanks. Is what I heard at the time.
That makes sense. Yeah. A lot of modern. When I think about like the Bekaa Valley, as we're kind of heading up, right? That's where you
Lebanon.
in Lebanon. You have the adoption of winemaking techniques in like, for example, like the Chateau Moussard, right, is a really famous example where the varietals are they're Western varietals, and Western winemaking, French, and the result is absolutely stunning. I mean, they're beautiful, and so it's finding that adaptation, like Ryan was saying before, right? Like the grapes are going to be attuned to their area, but also, right, it's a dance between not just the the genetics of the grape and the history of it, but also the winemakers and the culture of the time. And that's why this journey is so much fun to pick apart and to unravel. So,
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, were there any other questions there? Anybody else who wanted to chime in with deep burning question about maybe the origins of wine or these grapes? We're all ears.
Yeah, great to connect with you guys. We're looking forward to a period of time when we're going to be seeing you face to face again and doing some events. See some folks.
I was just going to say, really enjoyed the club, and that wine from Bethlehem was outstanding. We had it with some really fresh fish, like
we love that.
suggested in the write-up.
Excellent.
Awesome. I'm glad-
Yeah.
That's
Glad you
great.
enjoy it.
Yeah, thanks so much for letting us know, Jim. That's great. Glad you liked it.
Well, normally obviously we have a lot more time in an open-ended format, but Dana's actually in charge of checking COVID vaccination cards, I'm told, for his company holiday party. So we're kind of, I don't know if Ryan is able to stick around. I know Dana and T have to take off. But before they do, we would have just wanted to let you know we're obviously we're really excited about the club and trying to get the word out, but we're doing a little bit of a promotion this holiday season. If you're interested in, if you know anyone who would be interested, we're going to do a 6 or 12 month offer. So if you get a club for somebody for one of those intervals, you'll also get 15% off your club and their club for the 6 months. We just thought kind of in a period of trying to spread the gospel around a little bit. So we have that. And then if you're interested in any more of the wines from tonight, just reach out to us by email and we can obviously,
Okay.
most of you have done that before, so we can kind of figure out best way to get them to you. So
Yeah.
Great.
Excellent.
yeah.
So we could have any of these wines added to our next shipment
Yeah, that's a great
Exactly.
idea. We'll just ship them for free, throw them in with
for
your,
January one.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I'd be interested in the Bethlehem one, but I'll send you an email.
yeah, just shoot us an email. So
Yeah.
For the holidays. Yeah.
yeah.
Nope.
Okay.
Very good.
You did do that, Shelley. Yeah, well said, Patrick. Yep, indeed.
A little different split screen before, but
All right, everybody.
Okay, everyone. Thanks so much. If you don't see
Thank
you
you.
in person, happy holidays, and thanks for all the support. Talk soon.
Absolutely. Until then,
Cheers.
take care,
Happy
everybody.
holidays,
Thank you. Thank you.
Cheers.
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.